All right, what I thought we needed to do, my next latest and greatest good idea is to have like a test, right? We've been doing all this stuff on quadratics, and so we learned all these different methods of solving, and so let's do this. This is going to be like a test, okay? 3 problems. Each of the problems solved by all 4 methods, so it's like 12 problems in one, right? I want you to factor each one of them, complete the square, graphing, and quadratic formula. 3 problems just in case you can't read. I don't know if a video ever comes out where you can't read these. X squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. X squared minus 7x equals negative 10. And x squared plus 9x plus 18 equals 0. All right? We'll solve all 3 of those by all 4 methods. By all 4 methods, you should get the same answer every time. All right? But so here's an example. Let me do an example for you. Well, I'm solving it by all 4 methods, and by all 4 methods, we're going to come out with solutions. The whole point of it is to solve. All right? When we ask to solve or to look for a solution set, we're looking for all the numbers in the world that would make this a true statement if you put it in for x. Like if you put in a 1 for x, you get 1 squared plus 6 equal 14. That's not true. 1 plus 6 is equal to 7, not 14. Or no, 1 plus, let's see, 1 plus 5 equals 6, not 14. So 1 is not a solution to that. There is some number, there's probably 2 numbers that are solutions to this. We want to find them. We want to find them by all these different methods. All of these are factorable, okay? So you can solve them by factor because I handpicked them to where they would be factorable. And obviously, completing the square, graphing, and quadratic formula, you can use those for any quadratic equations, okay? So solve. Solve by factoring first. So no matter whatever method I'm using, I got to get it in standard form first. See that 14? We got to get it over here on the left side first. Subtract 14 from both sides, and we get x squared plus 5x minus 14 equals 0. All right, so now it's in standard form, and now I can factor it, and I'm going to graph it, and I'm going to solve by completing the square, and solve by the quadratic formula, all those different methods, right? So to graph it, I would go like this. It's got to be x times x to give me x squared. Looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me a negative 14 and add to give me 5. All right, if they multiply to give me a negative, that tells me the signs are different. Since the signs are different, then I'm looking for 2 numbers that will subtract, right? Because when we add them together, we'll take the sign of the larger and subtract. 2 numbers subtract to give me a positive 5. So I'm thinking of, okay, the 2 numbers that multiply to give me 14. I'm thinking of the factors of 14. It's either going to be 1 and 14 or 2 and 7, and that's about all the possibilities, right? So 2 and 7 obviously work. 7 minus 2 is equal to 5. I want a positive 7 and a negative 2, so that when I subtract them, I get a positive 5 like that, all right? So there it is, factored. So we'll solve. The only way 2 numbers can be multiplied together to give you 0 is if one of those factors is equal to 0. So x plus 7 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. Subtract 7 from both sides, x equals negative 7, or x is equal to positive 2. Solution set, negative 7, 2. All right, so there's the solution. Now, we ought to be able to solve by all the methods, and every time we solve this problem, we should come out with the same answer, negative 7 and 2. All right, so let me extend the page here, keep this problem going like this, because the next thing I want to do, you may not have different colored pencils to do all this, but I will do it in a different color. Now I'm going to solve this by, let's see, I'm going to solve it by graphing. Now solving by graphing, so let me just throw this graph up right over here. Solving by graphing, let's make it light on ourselves, right? I showed you a bunch of stuff on how to graph these things, but I showed you also the app on your calculator that can do the graphing fairly quickly. So here we go, edgy graph right there. Boom, I'll put that in, and I'll go to, I'm hoping you can all see all this. So I'll go to the equations right there. There's the old equation from way back, so I want to clear all that out, and I want x squared, so I do it after I put it in standard form there, right? So now I'm graphing. What I'm graphing is I'm graphing the equation y is equal to x squared plus 5x minus 4, minus 14. So x, there's x, little caret to the power of 2, x squared plus 5x minus 14. All right, then I go over to the graph. Oh, by the way, when you own this, you need to be sure you save the equation. I messed that up one day. One day I was like trying to do this, and I wasn't saving it. I'd go over to the graph, and the graph never looked right. And it was because I hadn't saved that in there. So let me make sure I got it right. X squared plus 5x minus 14. And so the graph of that, The graph of that looks like this. Okay, so again, what does the graph do for you? Well, wherever it crosses the x-axis, that's where y is equal to 0. So we're looking for the place where this thing crosses the x-axis. See, the vertex is down here below the x-axis. It's opening up because x squared is positive. It definitely crosses it at 2. And then this looks like between -6 and -8. So it's crossing the x-axis at 2 and at -7. So we have confirmed. And so what I want you to do, all right, here's what I want to do. Again, I don't want to just see, here's the answers. I want you show me that you know how to solve this by graphing. The vertex came all the way down here to -20. So I'm looking for a vertex right in here at -20. And I'm looking at the point -7 right there, +2 right there. Show me the parabola. Coming like that, okay? So that's all you have to do for graphing. Just do it on your calculator, copy the graph right there, but show me, because so I'll say, okay, you know how to factor it? Yes, you correctly factored those. You know how to graph it? Yeah, you got it correctly graphed right there, you're good. Let's go to completing the square. So solving by completing the square, okay? So let's see, so we pick it up from right here. X squared plus 5x minus 14 equals 0. And to complete the square, right? So to complete the square, we need to get an open space right here. Add 14 to both sides, all right? Take half of this number and square it. Half of 5 is 5 over 2. Square that is 25 over 4. So if you remember completing the square, you get this space, you take half of b and square it. So b is 5, so take half of that, it's 5 over 2, okay? So half of it is 5 over 2, and when I take that and square it, I get 25 over 4. That's how I figured out what number to put in here to make it a perfect square trinomial. If you can add it over here, you have to add it over there too to keep your equation equal, all right? Now, what does it factor into? So this would be complicated if you had to stop and think about it for a long time, but it always factors into whatever you have when you took half of it. Half of +5 was +5 over 2, so x plus 5 halves squared. So this is, if you took this binomial and squared it out, you would get this exactly. Okay, so that's the great thing about making it a perfect square trinomial, is you can factor it into some binomial squared. All right, and we've got a little fraction. I gave you one fractions. Maybe those will have some fractions in it, maybe not. I don't know. But that slows us down a little bit, obviously, because now I've got to add these two fractions. One of them, you know, it's a common denominator and all that problem. All right, so 14 over 1, 25 over 4. So to make these the same, I have to go multiply this one by 4 over 4. So 4 times 14 is 56. So 56 fourths plus 25 fourths. 56 plus 25 is 70, 81. So that's 81 over 4. Okay? And then, so now, the way you solve the equation is, once you have your perfect square, then you can take the square root of both sides. Again, we're doing the same problem 4 different ways. You want to take the square root of both sides, and when you do, you take plus or minus over here. Take plus or minus, because here, the square root just goes away. All right, so you get x plus 5 halves. Here, you get plus or minus, and the square root of 81 over 4, the square root of 81 is 9, the square root of 4 is 2. So 9 over 2. So plus or minus 9 halves. That means x plus 5 halves equals 9 halves, or x plus 5 halves equals negative 9 halves. And simplify, solve each one of those by subtracting 5 halves from both sides. So 9 halves minus 5 halves is 4 halves, which is 2. X is equal to 2. Here, I subtract 5 halves over there, and I get negative 9 halves plus negative 5 halves is negative 14 halves. Negative 14 halves is negative 7. So once again, negative 7, positive 2. Same answers that we got graphing, same answers that we got by factoring. And the last method that I'll review for you is the quadratic equation. So quadratic formula. So we start by saying, all right, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And by this time, you should have this memorized. You shouldn't have to keep looking back at the quadratic formula every time. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right? So let's go back to where we had the whole thing equal to 0. So like this right here. All right? A is equal to 1 because it's just 1x squared. B is equal to 5. and C is equal to negative 14. All right, so A, B, and C are going to plug into my quadratic formula like you would expect. X is equal to negative B, so that's a negative of 5, plus or minus B squared, 5 squared, square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, forgot, 14, all over 2 times A. Looking back up, okay, A is 1, B is 5, C is negative 14. So A is 1, negative B, this should be B is 5, so that should be negative 5. A couple of mistakes here, huh? Not like me. Plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times A times C, and C, as we said, is negative 14, all over 2 times A. All right, so A is 1, B is 5, and C is negative 14. So now we just simplify this, and hopefully it works out and gives me the same answers I had in all the others. That's the advantage we have, is that we know what the answer is supposed to be now, right? 5 squared is 25. 25 minus 4 times 1 times negative 14 will be plus, because negative times negative is positive. 4 times 14 is 56, all over 2A, which is 2 times 1, which is 2. So X is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 plus 56 is 70, 81. So that's 81 over 2. All right, equals, let's see, which way we're going here. Let's go this way. All right, the square root of 81 is 9. So I have negative 5 plus or minus 9 over 2. So that's negative 5 plus 9 over 2. Or negative 5 minus 9 over 2. Just trying not to run out of room, but it didn't work out for me. Negative 5 plus 9 is 4 over 2. Or negative 5 minus 9 is negative 14 over 2. So I'm coming out with my answers of 2 or negative 7. Final answer, solution set, smallest number first, negative 7 and 2. Okay, so this is solving by quadratic formula. This is solving by completing the square. This is solving by graphing. I just fired it up on my calculator and did that, graphed it, found the vertex down here. It hits right here and right here. So that's where the solutions are. And then the first thing I did was solve by factoring, okay? So use this great example of mine to go through and do all 3 of these problems. Solve these problems by factoring, completing the square, graphing, and quadratic formula. Again, this will be kind of like a test. Do all these, do them all right, show your work for everything. X squared minus X minus 12 equals 0. X squared minus 7X equals negative 10. And X squared plus 9X plus 18 equals 0. All right, good luck.